Welcome, everybody, to the Ideas to Fortune podcast, where our goal is to have entrepreneurs and business owners ignite your passion and fuel your purpose. I'm Darren Ross, your host, and today I have a special guest with me today, Stephen Smith from Potter's Inn. I met Stephen about a year ago. I saw him speak at a men's retreat, and I was just enamored and overtaken with his content and his information. And I thought, I have to get this guy on our podcast and just let him explain what he's doing in his world to help entrepreneurs. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephen right now. Stephen, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Glad to be with you, Darren. It's wonderful to be in your hometown. I've been working with leaders for about 35 years, leaders in the church and leaders who are outside the church, marketplace folks, and people that are aspiring to be rich young rulers in the 21st century. And I really have found in my heart I have a special place. There's a soft place in my heart for people that are trying to burn the candle at both ends, trying to climb the ladder of success. But oftentimes, Darren, as you know, we both know that as you climb, sometimes the ladder that we're climbing is really leaning against the wrong wall. And we get to the top or near the top and we realize maybe this is not what I thought it was going to be. So I've really devoted my life. I work at a retreat in Colorado, outside of Colorado Springs, called Potter's Inn at Aspen Ridge. You've been there with us, your wife has been there with us, and it's a beautiful place to come and rethink the trajectory of your life.
So tell us real quick how you got to this point. I mean, you're a former pastor, but just kind of walk us through exactly what your career was like and how you ended up here.
Well, even though I was a pastor, I was climbing a ladder that I thought would take me where I wanted it to go. And as I climbed each rung, each different church, each different venue, each different opportunity, I really discovered that as I reached the zenith and pinnacle point of my career in the mega church in North Carolina, that my marriage was not doing well. There was a huge gap between us. There was an emotional gap. I was very driven. I became addicted to my work. I really had an affair, and my mistress was not with another woman, it was with my work. And that's a dark, sordid, seedy affair to have to work through. And so I came to a place when I was in my 40s that I had to realize I need to look in the mirror. My wife was forcing me to look in the mirror, basically saying, it's over if something doesn't happen. And that was my wake-up call. And I think so many of us who are driven type A people need a wake-up call, or else we will hit the wall. We will run our lives on empty. We will drink a dangerous cocktail of success and realize there is no success in our hearts. We're living with illusions. We're not doing well. We're over-medicated. And we need help. We don't know how to navigate the white water of life.
And that's one of the questions I had on that I want to talk to you about. I mean, I heard you speak obviously a year ago, but then again in the last few days. But, you talked about the outer markers of success versus the inner markers of success. So can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think we have a fetish in North America, and this fetish is now worldwide, where we are consumed with what I call the outer markers of success. And that has to be the size of our car, the type of car, the square footage of our home, the size of our bank accounts, our mutual funds. And we are consumed with making it in an outer world. But what about our inner world? What about our heart? There's an old Jewish proverb, and it says, guard your heart, for from your heart flows the wellspring of life. And Darren, that says something really important to everyone that's listening to us today, that the heart has to be guarded. In my case, I didn't know how to do that. I barely knew I had a heart. I barely knew there was an inside job to do. I thought it was all about just making it, pressing, living in fifth gear. And come to find out, many leaders today strip the gears of their heart. They strip second, third, and fourth, and they live in a high-octane life, which is the high-octane life. And we burn up, we burn out, and we implode. Relationships, we show up as men and women, but we're hollow men and women. There's we haven't cultivated our inside.
I mean, I know I did that. I started business when I was 21, and I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and we grew up. My family were farmers, and my mom and dad had different businesses, and so I grew up with work, work, work my whole life, and that's all I knew. So I started my business in my college dorm room at 21, and I hit the ground running, and I really didn't even stop until I was in my mid 30s. And for me, it was all about what you said. It was about acquiring, achieving, attaining, and my each one of my standards was to see what else I could acquire. And in my early 20s, I was driving a Corvette, and then we got married and had a kid, and thought you had to drive a Lexus, so we had to drive a Lexus. And then the ultimate benchmark was the dream home. So I built the dream home, which was a huge house, and it was just an absolute disaster. And then we built a big monster building for our company. And I remember I looked back at like age 38 to 40, and I remember thinking, I looked in the rearview mirror, and I was like, is that it? Is that all there is? I did all this for that? Mm-hmm. And I just had this huge void and huge hole, in my heart and my soul and my marriage. And, our marriage was suffering, and my kids were suffering, and I didn't have a lot of close friends. It was just drive, work, work, work. And it just, it burns you out.
I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and I know that you are also. But one of the most important things that Jesus said, he said, you can gain the whole world, but lose your soul. And it sounds like you're kind of giving a witness that in your own life that you had done a lot of gaining of external markers, acquire, achieve, attain. That's what's in us. And until we really understand that drive and that push, we won't be cured of a dis-ease, a disease. I say it's a dis-ease. It's spelled the same way.
It's very much a dis-ease.
It is a dis-ease, and that's what was happening to you in your 30s. It's what happened to me in my 30s, and it was a wake-up call. I love that. I love a Spanish poet, Antonio Machado. He says, all the words of Jesus Christ can be reduced to two: wake up. And Darren, I can tell you're waking up, and I'm waking up. And waking up is just like, you just don't snap, you just don't turn on a dime. It's a turning of our life. And I'm still turning. I'm 61. I'm a couple decades older than you.
No, I'm 50.
Okay.
I only look 35.
I'm just 11 years older. But as we do that, it's a matter of beginning to turn a ship. And we need to turn our ship, or else all we're doing is rearranging the deck chairs of the Titanic with simple Band-Aid fixes. And there is a lot of people out there who are offering Band-Aid fixes. I see them all the time. But until we cure the dis-ease in our soul, and that is this insatiable need to prove ourselves and make something of ourselves and to do something significant, there's nothing wrong with that drive, by the way. But if it's not harnessed, we're going to end up shipwrecked and sunk in our life. And I see it every day of the week in my work.
Well, I know you talked a little bit about the other day, how Americans are always on. So talk a little bit about that, with how they're not ever able to disconnect, and also talk about the adrenal fatigue syndrome.
Yeah. Well, technology, God bless technology. You and I are using it right here to get this message out. There's a light side of technology and there's a dark side. We're always on. We're always available. I work with a friend at Potter's Inn who has an app on his phone, and it counts the number of times he reaches for his phone every hour, and it's astounding.
I think we all need that.
We all need
I need that.
There's an app for that. But the problem is we weren't created. We're not machines, you and I. We've grown up thinking that we can do it all. We can give 110%. No one can give 110% because you don't have 110%. You only have 100%. And so when you're giving and you're always on, you're always available. We're sleeping with our cell phones multiple times. They're buzzing. Our alarms are going off. People can find us instantly. So the brain never gets to come down. The heart never gets to relax. The soul never gets to really rest because we're checking, chop, 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 always being stimulated. And what happens, Darren, physically and biologically, When we're always on, it's tapping into organs like the adrenal gland, which is saying, get up, get up, get up, get up, fight or flight. You just be aware. 24/7, be aware, be aware, be aware. And the challenge is that we need to come off of that. That's like a dangerous elixir. It's the elixir of the 21st century. Technology, while great, has a threat level to us. And so we encourage leaders all over the world to learn the challenge of unplugging. And we start with just 1 day a week. And this can send people into a panic attack.
I mean, for our listeners, I tried this, and I still try to practice it periodically. When my wife and I got back from your retreat, I made a point to leave my cell phone in the kitchen overnight to charge, and then leave my laptop in my living room. And honestly, I will have to say, without even hesitation, the quality of sleep I got when I didn't go to sleep with having looked at one or two screens was night and day difference.
Yeah, because when we're checking the markets in Europe before we go to bed to determine what we're going to have to do and how we're going to switch and call people, when we're checking even baseball scores and updating our Facebook status page or working on social media, and we're not allowing the brain to come down, the soul to come down. The Quakers have this great song. It's a gift to be simple. It's a gift to be free. It's a gift to come down where we ought to be. And we need to rest. So the blue hue of the MacBook has replaced the candle in the bedroom. And we just think we can handle it. And this is the way life is. But that's where we are submitting ourselves to becoming more machine-like, more robotic in our orientation. Get up, drive, get her done, achieve this, get your numbers up. And we don't know really how to rest. To listen to Jesus, his 3 triage questions. Triage is a medical term that helps you really do a quick kind of inner radar of how you're really doing. He asked 3 questions, and they were these. Are you tired? Are you worn out? And are you burned out? And he said, on religion. And you know what? In my work with thousands of marketplace leaders and ministry leaders, we're all caught somewhere in those 3 questions. We're living our lives on empty. We live with an exhaustion. We live with an inner fatigue and also an inner sense of heightened anxiety. Many leaders today are living with their threat knob turned all the way up, and it's blowing out our organs. Our blood pressure is up. We can't feel good. We have some ailments in us, and we're just pushing these things down like beach balls. And the beach balls need to come up. Our life is at risk, Darren. And this isn't just about being successful and making a fortune. You can make a fortune and not have a life. You can be very successful and not give any attention to your heart and your soul. And the hope for us is that we can pay attention to our well-being. We don't have to neglect our soul. And so for many, many leaders, regardless of the venue, as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, a mega leader, a corporate leader, it is learning to combine and converge your inner life with your outer life. And that's where the action is for any leader.
Well, I remember when we were out at your retreat center, and we'll have Stephen tell us a little bit more about the retreat center here a little bit near the end, but I remember you telling a story about you had a group of marketplace leaders or pastors that showed up to your retreat center, and they came flying down your gravel driveway, and you went out to help them unpack and carry their suitcases in. So just kind of take the story and tell it. It'll be better if you tell it.
Oh, it's a funny story, but it's a sad story. These were 2 leaders of 2 of the largest industries in Colorado Springs that decided to drive up to our retreat center and have lunch. And they left a dust trail coming down our long driveway to our retreat. And, at our retreat, there's Pikes Peak. It was snow-capped that day. There was a blue royal sky. There was the Sangre de Cristos, the snow-capped mountains you could see. And they came flying down that. They got out of their car. I walked out to shake their hand to say, welcome to Potter's Inn. And the first thing out of their mouth was, do you have Wi-Fi?
They said that before they even said hello.
They did not even say hello because they were on. Their adrenaline was pumping. They needed to be in touch with their assistant, that someone might need them. We don't know how to unplug. And even in the way that we think we're going to take vacation and rest, most executive marketplace leaders that I don't know how to rest because they go and do all this heavy steroid adventure and they come back more exhausted from their vacation and they're not rested when they plug back in on Monday morning. Jesus said, I will show you how to take a real rest. And I think in the 21st century, Darren, if there's anything leaders need to know as we're busting our butts, as we're chasing our dreams, it's how to really rest. We can rest and we can work hard. We can engage and we can learn to disengage.
And that kind of brings us into the topic where you're kind of like probably the foremost expert on is the topic of soul care. So kind of talk about soul care and really what it is, because I don't think a lot of people have ever heard of it, and just kind of give a little bit about where you're going with your works on soul care.
Thank you. I love the topic of caring for your soul. We care for our bank accounts. We care for our cars. We wash them. Most people I know spend more money on their cars than they do their souls because sometimes we're not even taught. And even in church, pastors, sadly, are oblivious to this because many of them themselves, Darren, are climbing a ladder. And even though they're committed in their life, it's just like, we need to rethink this. So from the book of Genesis all the way through the very end of the New Testament, there are some amazing statements, like Moses said this statement to the children of Israel: keep your soul diligently and live. And I love that. It's just like, well, we know the 10 Commandments. We can quote those, and those are plastered on school buildings and courthouses, and, well, they used to be on courthouses and churches. But how do we keep our soul when everything is coming unglued? I want this message to come back into the church, come into the Christian language, to become a part of our vocabulary. You know, Stephen Covey taught us so much about just the vocabulary. First things first. Remember that phrase? Yeah. And we need to learn the language here to keep our soul, or like the wisest, greatest book in the Bible, Proverbs. Talk about tweetable quotes. Is the book of Proverbs. They're all under that character limit, 140 characters, but guard your heart. Then tell me how. And this is our work at Potter's Inn. We are helping leaders understand how to guard your heart so you don't get blown up, so your heart doesn't implode. We can guard our heart. We can learn to take a real rest. We can strengthen our soul. Even in the New Testament, Darren, there's a phrase in Acts chapter 14, verse 22, where it talks about Paul walking around and he strengthened the soul. I love that. And don't you think at your age and your wife's age and a 30-year-old that's listening to us and a 70-year-old that might be listening to us, how do we get our soul strengthened? Because the bandwidth of living in an always on and an always available, pedaling harder, getting on the hamster wheel and spinning, we need to know how to do these things. So Potter's Inn is one place where people can come and really understand how to care for your soul.
So let our listeners know a little bit about Potter's Inn and kind of what it is, where it is, how you got there, and what people expect when they visit your retreat center.
Yeah. Well, Potter's Inn, first of all, is more than just a place. So we have some resources. You can go on pottersinn.com and realize that it's really a virtual experience. There's some lessons that you can learn on video. You don't actually have to come to our retreat. Our retreat is really a hub where people come from all over the world for some workshops, for some retraining, for some private work. So it's, I've found over the years, Darren, people want to keep their junk very private. And a lot of times marketplace leaders, by the way, don't want to go tell their pastors of what's really going on because their pastors are using them in high profile positions. They're giving, they're supporting the church and the work. So marketplace leaders really need a safe place to go and say, I'm in trouble. I'm in an emotional affair. I'm in trouble with some secret addiction. And so we work in all levels with leaders' lives.
So tell our listeners kind of what the retreat center is like, what it's nestled, how it's nestled into the mountains, and a little bit of background about the actual location
Yeah, I
itself.
like the fact that you're smiling as you ask me that.
Well, my wife Tony and I were there for 4 days last summer, and it was, I'll just tell you for the record, it was probably the most beautiful, most quiet, most serene place I've ever been on planet Earth, and it's probably the place where I felt the most closest to God ever. So, and the nice thing about it was there was no cell service, so you couldn't use your cell phone. There were no TVs. You were actually unplugged and turned off, and that was a gratifying, relieving experience. So just tell them about, a little bit about the facility and the building and the property and everything.
I can guarantee the blood pressure of every listener has just gone up when you say no cell service and TV, because it's just like, how do you do it then? We actually can provide cell service and TV. But sometimes in our hard wiring, we just need to really unplug. But the retreat is nestled between 3 mountain ranges, which you can see from our actual property. There's Pikes Peak, America, the beautiful mountain right there. There's the Sangre de Cristos, which are about 75 miles away. And then there's the Collegiate Range. And an old Jewish poet said, "As the mountains surround Jerusalem, you, O Lord, have surrounded me." And Darren, you know, how you just described it, you were at a place in your life that you needed to be cocooned. You needed to be surrounded. And we need safe, beautiful places where we can really let go and really begin to rethink, and our souls can catch up with our bodies. You know, our bodies are so much further ahead of us. And so retreating is really a way, it's an old ancient way that people used to build into their calendar, into their rhythm of regular times of getting away. And we violated that principle. And at Potter's Inn, we're a part of the answer here to help people navigate the whitewater of life by coming away or doing some self-paced online studies about how to care for your soul. All of this is available on our website. So on the cyber world, we want to be available to everybody. The retreat is available for the folks that can get there for some special one-on-one work or a group retreat.
And I'll just tell a little bit of this about to our listeners, but I mean, it's an old converted barn, horse barn, on 35 acres. And then amongst the property, you have how many actual real life log cabins that were built?
Well, it's a turn of the century in the 1800s, 2 little log cabins. These guys back in the 1800s built these cabins, and we've reclaimed them and restored them. And then the barn has a lodge in it with several bedrooms. So we can handle up to about 20 guests at our retreat at a time. And we want to be an intimate place. This isn't a conference center. This is a place for one life at a time to come back to life.
I remember we were there for 4 days, and there were one of the days or 2 of the days, I can't remember, but there was a time where when you were giving your instruction and your training, that we had to go after lunch and be quiet and not speak for like 4 hours. So I didn't realize that I couldn't whisper. So my wife was chewing me out, and for somebody like me with my personality, not speaking at all for 4 hours is like almost impossible. But that was a really great experience also.
So we try to teach people the value of silence, you know, the value of being in solitude. And silence really becomes an old ancient practice. If I could line up all the spiritual masters, Darren, of all the centuries, they'd say, what is the hope for, how do we restore our heart? How do we find our soul again? How do I begin to live from the inside out rather than the outside in? All of them would agree with me on one point: begin with silence. Learn to be still. Learn to center your hearts rather than throwing out and spinning out and centrifuging just because we're always on. Silence gives us that chance to catch up. Our souls need to catch up with our bodies, and we need to live undivided.
So tell us a little bit about who Potter's Inn is really for. What types of people, and who can come and who can't come and whatever.
Well, I'm sitting with the person right here looking at him that Potter's Inn was built for, and it's for people like you and me, people who are chasing a dream, people who are pedaling hard. When it's best understood, caring for the soul is preventative work. When you care for your soul, it prevents you from burning out, from toasting out and smoking out. It prevents you from living like a machine. It helps you live life with a sense of abundance. And that's the primary word that Jesus himself used when he described the life that he wanted to mark his followers was a life of abundance. And he meant an inner abundance. That's what he meant, an inner sense of joy. Most leaders are bankrupt on joy. Most leaders that I encounter work way over 40 hours a week. I've never met a leader at Potter's Inn that works a 40-hour week. And if you work a 40-hour week, you probably should go to another retreat center. So this is for people that are really thinking of reclaiming the years that the locusts have eaten in their life. And it's for everybody. It's for ministry leaders and it's for marketplace leaders. We live in that sweet balance. Half of the people that come to Potter's Inn and half of the people that I write with, write to and write for are ministry leaders or marketplace leaders. So all of this, Darren, if I could just mention a new book that I've been able to write. It's called Inside Job.
I've got it right here.
Inside
For
Job.
our viewers on the video podcast and for the people on the audio podcast. Inside Job, doing the work within the work.
Yeah, and that's available through Amazon. You can order it if you're Prime. It'll be there in 2 days, or order it through us. Go to pottersinn.com, or there's a special web for this book with a downloadable workbook, or you can buy a workbook and you can work through these great themes, the great themes of caring for your soul, doing your inside job, doing your inner work in a small group over coffee, over lunch, in a Sunday school class, or in a business platform. So I just want our leaders to know that there really are resources beyond this podcast to help you.
So you do your retreat for marketplace leaders and pastors. Mm-hmm. Tell us the names of the different retreats that you have. And I know you have some for couples, some for groups, and some for just husbands and wives by themselves. And so give us the names of the different ones and what they're for.
Yeah, well, you can come for a 5-day soul care intensive. It's like a 360-degree walk around your heart and your life, where each day you're the agenda. We're not working through a program. We're sick of programs. We're sick of filling the blank answers. They don't work. Those are Band-Aid strips. We need heart surgery, many of us, because there's something wrong with one of the 4 corners of our heart. You know, I love the poet Mary Oliver. She says, "The heart has many dungeons. Bring the light, bring the light." So a soul care intensive is a way to kind of shine the light in the 4 quadrants of the human heart and just say, oh, there's a 4th deep quadrant. It holds our secrets, it holds our fears, it holds deep things that we need to just get out. Or they will work themselves out. We will act out of the deep hidden things that we've never really explored in our life. There's a kind of a lighter way to tackle that, and this is called a soulscape, and that's where you and your spouse could come for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, and you meet with someone on our team that we call a spiritual director or a soul care provider, and they're just working with you on the themes that you want to work with. And then they're coaching you, hey, go back, take a long hike this afternoon, take a beautiful drive in the Rocky Mountains, go look at some elk, and think about this question. Just take your journal, take a notebook, write down a few thoughts, and come back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 o'clock, and we'll sit for an hour. That's a beautiful new model that we're offering. Our hallmark retreat is called the Soul Care Experience. And that's a 5-day retreat. That's the retreat you and Tony
that's what we did.
And it's just a beautiful way to introduce you to the great themes of soul care and to let you practice them. And we love doing it. All that information also is at pottersinn.com.
Which is the one for business owners that you come out for a few times a year? Which one is that?
Yeah, out of the need for business people and leaders, we have started what we call a Soul Care Institute. And it's actually a 2-year training initiative where you come to Potter's Inn 3 times a year for 4 days, and we're really working with you. They're small cohorts, 15 to 20 people, and the first 2 and this year Darren, have actually filled up and sold out. So we need to be thinking about 2017 here for our listeners. But all of that information is also at pottersinn.com.
And you mentioned your first or your most recent book, Inside Job. Tell us about the other books you've written.
Well, I think because of the compelling need for this message, I've been on this journey for a long time of my own reclaiming my life. Probably a book that some of our listeners might be familiar with is called The Lazarus Life. It's translated now in multiple languages around the world. And I tell the story of the friend of Jesus who got sick and who died, who ended up in a tomb, and he came out with grave clothes all wrapped around him, and they were stinking and smelly. And I think that's the picture of so many business people that I know today.
Totally is.
They're out of the tomb, but they're all wrapped up and they don't know how to get free. And in that book, I talk about the 5 grave clothes that most leaders wear in their life. There's another book for men called Transformation of a Man's Heart. And I talk about the great themes of a man's heart that need to be transformed. There's a devotional book that you can read called Embracing Soul Care. And that's just some daily reading to kind of keep you stimulated, to give you a new paradigm there. And then I think the classic book that I have written on this subject is called Soul Custody, Choosing to Care for the One and Only You. And that gives really the message of soul care in 10 chapters. So there's many resources that you can get. They're ebooks, some of them are audiobooks, and all of them are print books with different publishers that I've been able and fortunate to work with.
And you're also coming out here real, I think you said this spring maybe?
It'll be in the summer.
With an online training?
It'll be an online webinar and class called Soul Care 101, and it's an 8-session video where you're just watching a video of my wife and I work through the great themes of soul care. And you can learn at your pace. You can pause. You can watch this on a plane with some headphones. You can watch it with some friends or by yourself. And there's a downloadable workbook with questions and sessions and notes. So we're very excited about this because we feel the need to expand the message because so many leaders are in trouble and wanting help.
So you and your wife and a group of volunteers and a small team really run and totally operate Potter's Inn.
We have a dedicated team that work along with us. We're a tribe, and we're really shouldering this message together. Each of us has different venues, just like a team in a business or in a church. And we're really committed to live this message and to offer this message.
Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, Darren, I just want to say you're the kind of guy, and Tony's the kind of woman, your wife, that I live for. And I just want leaders to know that there are people that are for you, not just for your wealth, but for your heart. And I want to be one of those champions for your heart, Darren, as we walk forward, and for the listeners that listen to us, because two are better than one. That's another Bible verse. It's just an amazing verse. 2 are better than 1. Another verse, as iron sharpen iron, so one person sharpens another. We need each other. And every leader, no matter if you're scaling the wall of leadership, you're at the top or you've fallen to the bottom, we need another person to extend a hand and say, come this way, come this way. And that's my life's mission.
I mean, I'll just tell it for our listeners in full transparency. I was one of those leaders that he's describing when I went there. I mean, I would say I was tired, worn out, burned out, and bummed out. And, you know, it was something that I had to do and my wife had to do and we had to do as a couple and I had to do as a business owner. But, I mean, I'd say on day 2, you know, I was crying like a baby and you know, I felt like Stephen had taken my heart and turned it inside out and upside down and really started a renewal and a transformation process on me. It's something that I needed. And frankly, I think it's something that she and I will do periodically over the next few years. It's something that's, I think it's just called life maintenance. It's something you have to do. And it's super over the top affordable. I told Stephen he should charge way more than he does for this retreat.
We did up our prices after you told me that. No, I'm just joking.
The facility is just phenomenal. The cooking is over the top. And just the time alone that you have with other people and with yourself and with God is just indescribable. So I would highly suggest all of our listeners check you guys out, pottersinn.com, and you also have .org?
It's in myinsidejob.org.
MyInsideJob.
And that's for the book.
That's your new book.
But either way, you can get the Potter's Inn.
Okay, pottersinn.com. There you have it, folks. Stephen Smith, pottersinn.com. And he wrote the new book, Inside Job, Doing the Work Within the Work, just recently launched. So this is Darren Ross, your host on the Ideas to Fortune podcast. Catch us on the next episode.